bring that up, we are going to be talking about salt today. We are in the Gospel of Matthew, and we just got finished with the Beatitudes, and so we move on from them today. But before we move on to today's passage, I just want to do a little recap of what we have been speaking about. So let's just go ahead and read through the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. So we looked at those to begin with yesterday, or last week, and we saw this progression. How it all starts with that first one, to be poor in spirit. Without being poor in spirit, you can have none of the other ones. And that poor in spirit means to know we are spiritually bankrupt. When it comes to our relationship with God, we bring nothing to the table. That we have nothing. And so we seek Him with everything we have. And that shows us right there that everything we're going to learn from here on in the Sermon on the Mount, from which these Beatitudes flow from, is all of grace. It is all by the grace of God that we can be merciful and pure in heart and be peacemakers. And so to be poor in spirit, it then flows from there that we mourn. We see our actual character, our actual condition. That we are separated from God, and we see the reason for it, and we mourn it, our sin. Our true nature. From there, those two things, it flows into meekness. And we said meekness is this gentle, humble attitude towards other that is totally devoid of pride. It is prideless. It is to get rid of self altogether. And when you are poor in spirit and you know your own spiritual condition, it's easy to have that meek character and how it all flows. And then knowing that we bring nothing to the table, we hunger and we thirst for righteousness. We hunger and we thirst to be made right with God. And God has made that way through us through faith in Jesus Christ, to put our trust in Jesus. And He says, you will be filled. And then once we are filled, then we see these qualities that we can take out into the world and share with the world. We are merciful. We are pure in heart. And we are peacemakers. And we said that these are so different from what the world says is important. The world does not say, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the self-righteous, maybe. Blessed are those who mourn. No. Blessed are those who are totally content and happy in everything they do. Blessed are the meek. No. Blessed are the proud and the powerful. Correct? That's what the world says. And so we've been drawing this distinction. And Jesus meant that in the Beatitudes to say, this is you. This is my kingdom character. Of the people who are in my kingdom, this is what they will look like. And then this is what everyone else will look like. And we see that distinction, and we will continue to talk about it today. And because of that distinction, He goes on to say, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. He says, when you are pure in heart, when you are merciful, when you are a peacemaker, you will be persecuted because you will stand out. You will be different from the world. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And so, as we get in to our passage today, got to note, to be the salt and the light of the world. And notice this when we go over it. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. There's nothing you do to merit that. You just are. He says, once you have that kingdom character of those Beatitudes and what they entail, you will be the salt of the earth. You will be the light of the world. And we see that it's all of grace. It's all what He has done. And by living out these Beatitudes, we will naturally be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. So now let's actually learn what that means. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. So we start with, you are the salt of the earth. What the heck is Jesus talking about here? You are the salt of the earth. So throughout church history, there's been a couple ideas about what this metaphor means. One is that we are to flavor the world, like we are the flavor of the world, like salt flavors everything, and there might be something to that. The other is that salt was very precious back in the day. In fact, people would actually get paid in salt sometimes because it was so precious. So you are the preciousness of the earth, and that could be as well. But I think really what Jesus is speaking of here is salt was the main preservative of the time. It's what kept stuff from rotting. And with that in mind, with Jesus using it in that context, we can learn some things about this. The world is in a state of decay. When he says you are the salt of the earth, he's saying you are to prevent the world and its decay. And do we have to doubt this today? I mean, I don't want to be the preacher, the Christian preacher who's up here slamming the world all the time. And I think by the end of this, you'll see that's not my intent here, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not pointing the finger at the world. But when you turn on the news, are you surprised these days when somebody goes into a place and shoots it up for no apparent reason? Are you shocked by it anymore? Not really. Are you shocked when a politician is found to be cheating on his wife to extort a bunch of money? Are you shocked by it? I'm not. I taught U.S. history as part of my student teaching, and so I taught the kids about Watergate and whatnot, and the people were absolutely outraged that a president could lie to the people. And when the Watergate tapes came out and it showed Richard Nixon and they heard him cussing and using this foul language, they were appalled. How can the president cuss? Look at where we are now. And so I'm just like looking through all these things in the world. Do you know what the average age as a kid that looks at pornography is these days? 11 years old is the average age that a kid starts looking at pornography. When I was 11, I remember that the most controversial TV show on TV was Married with Children. You guys remember that show, Al Bundy? And I couldn't even watch that. If I was to watch Married with Children right now, we would all say that is nothing. That is really just, it's nothing. But what I bring up here is we have become I just look at my life, I'm 36 years old. How desensitized to immorality that I have become in my life. And just the things of this world now that we have, if we were to show those 30 years ago, if you were to turn on TV 30 years ago and people would view it, they would be outraged. There's no way it would ever happen. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I'll be watching TV, sometimes we'll be watching some show and this guy just goes and cheats on his wife and just like watching it and there's like nothing to it. What's wrong with me? Like that I'm just okay with it. I'm just going along watching it. Like, it's just another affair going on TV, out to everyone to see. And so I don't need to sit up here and preach about the world in decay because I think we can all say by history we can see that it is. So our job is to slow that decay. And we'll be talking about how we do that. It's by living out that kingdom character, the Beatitudes, and just naturally being what we are. And pronouncing the rule of God. We said God's kingdom is the rule of God on earth. And so we announce that the kingdom of God is available to all, and we live under its domain right now. We talked about that, like totally legal for me to go to a strip club right after this tonight. Totally legal in this state, but I live under the kingdom guidelines. I live under kingdom law, so that is not acceptable to me. And we live that out today. This next part, it says, "But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." Salt can't actually lose its saltiness. You can have salt sitting somewhere for as long as you want, and it's still going to be salty. Salt is just salt. Okay, it's still going to be salty. But what he means by this is, back in the day when they collected salt can become impure by being mixed with other minerals and whatnot. And so in a sense, it loses its saltiness by being like all that is around it, becoming impure by all the other minerals that are around it. I think that's what Jesus is talking about. And it goes back to that we are to be distinct from this world. That's what he's saying, is like when we become like this world, we are like salt that has lost its saltiness. It is good for nothing. And I think that has been the biggest problem with the church throughout its history, that we just try to be like the world. And maybe sometimes with really good intentions of like, well, this is really popular right now, let's just do this. But you just look throughout church history, the church has tried to become more and more like the world, and it has done nothing but hurt. Jesus says here, it is your distinctiveness, it is your difference from the world that is attractive, not your sameness. Who wants to be, like, if I can go to a church and I can just listen to somebody who's basically saying what I'm going to hear on Oprah the next day, why would I even go to that church? I'm just going to watch Dr. Phil or Oprah, And so we have this issue, and Jesus says this is his words. He says, there is nothing worse. He says, it is worthless. Its only use is to be trampled under people's feet. And what he's talking about is nominal Christianity. He's talking about Christianity in name only. That I claim it, but my life looks nothing like it. I don't actually live out the Beatitudes. I don't do anything like that, but I'll say I'm a Christian. But I look just like everybody else. And he says that is worthless. It is good for nothing. 2 Timothy 3, Paul writes, and this is kind of little, I'm going to have to get down to read it. He's writing to Timothy, and Paul knows he's about to die. He's in prison, he's about to die. And he writes to Timothy, this guy he's bringing up to take over the church, kind of. And he says, but understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people. And I always thought that was talking about the world, but it's not. It's talking about the church. Having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And he says, avoid such people. It shows us he's talking about the church, because to avoid such people, he writes to Timothy in another letter, says you'd have to escape from the world altogether to get away from that. We see that Jesus was the one who was hanging out with sinners all the time and being with them. And that's what Jesus is getting at here. When we just claim it and we don't actually live it, like we are not filled with the Spirit, we don't have that power. Why would anybody want to be like us? If we just say we're Christian, we live like everyone else. And I think that has done more harm to Christianity than just about anything else ever. So really what it comes down to when we look at this distinction, being distinct from the world, is who are you trying to impress? Okay, if I'm trying to impress the world and the people of the world, I'm going to be like the world. But if I'm trying to impress God, because that's who that truly matters, then I'm going to be distinct from the world. Next, you are the light of the world. The city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Again, we see the distinction. You are not the darkness, you are the light. You are the light of the world. I don't know if you could draw a greater distinction than saying one thing is dark and the other thing is light. You are the light of the world. What's it say? I mean, it tells us the world is in darkness, and we've talked about that. We know that. We covered that. But why? Jesus tells us in John 3, and this is the judgment. The light has come into the world. Jesus says, I am the light. The light has come into the world, and people loved darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. Why is there darkness? Because people want to do whatever they want to do. He said God's kingdom is about his rule. Well, no, I don't want any part of that. I want to have my own rule. I want to be my own God. I want to do what I want to say what's right and what's wrong in my world. Paul, in Acts 26, he's talking about his conversion. And he says this. This is him on the road to Damascus. He's talking about this conversation he had with Jesus. And I said, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting, but rise and stand upon your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from your people and from the Gentiles, to whom I am sending you to open their eyes, so that they may turn from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. Do you see what he does there? He links the darkness with the power of Satan, with the kingdom of Satan, which we've talked about, and the light with that of the kingdom of God, the power of God. And so when we're going through and people tell you, just do what makes you happy. It's all about you. Just do what makes you happy. Tell me where you see that in the Bible. You will not see that in the Bible. That is the darkness. When you want to do everything for yourself, self, you become a slave to it and you live in the darkness. But true light is when you come to Jesus Christ and into God's kingdom. Next, we are not the light source. We are lights, but Jesus is the true light. He is the true light. Right on the website. And you want to make sure everyone knows it. Right when you open it, it says, Jesus is the true light, because it's all about him. In John 8, he says, again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. He's saying, those who will be my disciples, who follow me in my ways, they will live in this light, in the kingdom of God, following me. And he is the only way out of darkness. Jesus Christ. And this world has tried so many ways to be enlightened, whether it is by education or politics or technology or whatever it may be, and it has all failed time and time again. Beginning of the 20th century, I was reading a thing how everyone thought that we were so advanced now that world peace was coming because we had this new technology and the sciences were up and running. We had everything good. And by the end of the 20th century, we'd had 2 world wars, and we'd used our technology to make nuclear bombs to kill mass amounts of people. And so we see it with technology today. We have all this awesome thing called the internet, which for me is the best. I can look up and write sermons so much easier just to be able to look all this stuff up. But what do we use it for? Pornography. And all these other things that are just horrible. Okay? Jesus is the only way. We are to be reflectors of his light, pointing back to him. And he is our example. Jesus, although he was God in the flesh, came down and washed people's feet. He was a humble servant. So are any followers of him, do any of us think that we are above any task? Well, I'm this, I'm too good for that. No. God came down and washed people's feet, which was the lowest thing that they could do at the time. So we follow his example. You want to be a light? Be a humble servant out in the world. Do the things that nobody else will do. And then we'll see Jesus on the cross. Although he did nothing, he went and suffered and died for all those around him. Sacrifice. Are we sacrificing for others? Doing what we can in radical love. Next. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to the entire house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. We are to be open and intentional about our faith, not hiding. He says, take that lamp and put it on a stand so it lights everything up. That's to be visible. And we are to be visible in our faith, in our Christianity. Max had a great story. He just started a new job, okay? And he told his boss, he's like, yeah, I lead worship at a church. And his boss comes out to all the other employees and say, Max is a pastor. If you need prayer, Max is going to pray for you. You just come see him. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Just the first day of work. This guy's going to pray for you. It's just so cool. But we are to be out there proclaiming the good news. Why would we not want to? I always come back to this, why would we not want to? Everybody loves good news to share it. We have the best news of all time to share with people. Let's go out and create relationships and share the gospel. And by good works is what he says. By good works. Good works in which God gets the glory, not us. Okay? So we're going to be, in this Sermon on the Mount, we're going to be talking about these things like, Jesus is going to talk about the Pharisees and the scribes who just do everything. Everything they do, they're doing these good works, but it's all about them. Look at me, because they want everyone to like them. No. Everything we do is for the glory of God, and we all deflect it back to Him because it's all about Him. And then it says, glory to your Father who is in heaven. And this is the first time in the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus calls God Father. And before this, God was never referred to really as Father. Jesus here changes the way that we view God. He changes our understanding of God in such a significant way to view God as our Father. And so, when I'm looking at this, I'm saying, like, it kind of makes sense. Jesus brought some little kids up on his knee one time, and he says, do not, hey, that fell. He says, do not shy away these kids, or something like that, for to such as these belong the kingdom of God. And we are to be like children in our childlike faith, depending on our Father in everything we do. So let me ask you this. You come to, let's say a 3 or 4-year-old comes up to you and has the best manners of all time. It's like, yes, sir, thank you, sir. And is just like so kind to everyone you meet, and they're just like a rock star. You're going to be like, that kid's pretty cool. But what's the second thing you're going to think? Their parents did a great job in raising that kid, right? So it is with us. We have a Father who's trained us and given us His way, our way of doing things. So when people see our good works, they give glory to Him because He is the one who's done it all. And then when people see this difference, this is what I want, guys. Like, we go out into this world, if there is something different about you, this is how it goes. Like, people just see that you're different. Like, why is he, like, this just happened in his life. His kid just got cancer, and yet he's still praising God. He's still rejoicing. Or he's always doing all these things that's way below his pay grade. Why are they doing that? And they're so happy all the time. Why is that? I was just a jerk to him, but he was so nice to me in return. Why is that? Finally, they say, what is up with this person? They're so different. There you go. Well, there's this guy named Jesus. Somebody told me about him once. What he did for me on that cross. And I just said, I give my life to you. And he's changed me. Changed the entire everything of my life. And there's your end. Be different. So, as a church, it is really easy for us to go and blast the world. And I bet you if we looked at a bunch of sermons today that took place earlier today, we would see a bunch of blasting of the world, of how terrible this world is, right? Look at the decay and look at the darkness and all these things. And that's true. But what Jesus is saying here is that we need to look a lot more in the mirror. Because you are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world. So if the world is rotten, where's the salt? And as a church, as a universal church, we need to be a better job of saying, where is the salt? Where is the light? Because if this world is the way it is, then someone's not doing their job. And Jesus said that is our job. You are the salt. You are the light of the world. You can't blame unsalted meat for going bad. It's just going to happen. And we do this, guys, it's not by our works. We've talked about this. It's by emptying ourselves so that we may be filled. We had the glass last week, right? Empty yourself so you may be filled with God by the Spirit of God, and it is His power, and He is the one who does this. So we need to get on our knees and seek Him and say, God, please empower me to go and be the salt of this earth, to be the light of this world, because I can't do it. But I trust that you can. And so, as I was writing this, it didn't escape my attention that we are called True Light Church. That is to point to Jesus Christ. And Jesus is all the salt and all the light that this world needs. And it is our mission to go out and to proclaim Him in our words, in our deeds, in our thoughts, in our actions, in everything we do. It's all about Jesus. He has chosen us to be his ambassadors to this world. And what a task he has given us. We should be humble that he has said, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. And here's the deal. It is dark outside. But the light shines the brightest when it is the darkest. Okay, and we can go out. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. The world wasn't a good place then. It was still a world in rebellion to God, but God loved them so much that he sent his Son. And though you may get persecuted by this world, although this world may be against your values and everything, you are to love that world. Love this world as God loved the world before him, because that is our Father and that's what he did. In spite of everything else. And I just want to end us by reading from Ephesians 5 here today. And I put everything up on the screen, so I never actually get to open my Bible when I'm preaching, so I was like, I'm just going to open it today. So Ephesians 5, 1 through 20. You can just listen. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality, or of any kind of impurity, or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. For of this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a person as an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of such things God's wrath comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore, do not be partners with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. This is why it is said, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another with psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Sing and make music from our hearts to the Lord, always giving thanks to God the Father for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. So that's what we're going to do.